wish that I knew how much I was going to be cooking.
That thing's big.
Wow. You are going to need to be more selective about the clothes you bring. You'd be surprised all the things you use water for. Hi friends, welcome to or back to my channel. I'm going to be sharing some of the things I wish I knew before I started van life. I've been living in my van for almost 3 years now, so I've learned a lot along the way, and a lot of things that I wish I would have known, mistakes and lessons that I made. But first, let's make some avocado toast.
Working on a fastball, throwing hard, aiming high and a little bit outside. If it never gets dark, I'll never go inside.
I love the way bread tastes when it's toasted with butter. Okay, the very first one. I wish that I knew how much I was going to be cooking. A lot of these are going to be very specific to how I live while traveling in a van. There's so many different ways and lifestyles within van life. But for me, I spend extended periods of time in nature, which means I really stockpile food. I do have a fridge and I have pantry space. The nearest town for me right now is like 30-40 minutes, so I'm obviously not going to go eat out every day. And I don't have a microwave or anything like that, so it really forces me to cook the majority of my meals, because if I'm eating things like granola bars as a meal, like, I don't feel good. So I do cook more than I would in a house, because in a house you have more easy things to cook, like microwavable meals and stuff like that. And I think that knowledge would have made me modify the space a little bit more. I probably would have 2 different induction cooktops so that I could cook a pot and a pan at the same time. So yeah, that's the first thing I wish I would have known. But I'm making it work. The next tip is the type of clothing you'll need. You are going to need to be more selective about the clothes you bring, and you're also probably going to need clothes that you might not need in the city or wherever you're from. Like for me, I really love having material like this because cotton really does smell more so than some other materials. So there are other materials that are better at kind of wicking off the smell and the sweat. I think what I'm wearing is polyester, but definitely you're gonna want some clothes that are like water resistant, a really thick jacket for when it gets cold. There were a lot of clothes that I bought for van life that I really didn't have in the city, and I didn't really need to have when I was living in an apartment. And I think a great way to get a collection of clothes that really works well in an outdoor space and is very resistant to smells and sweat and stuff like that is to go to REI and really just delve into a lot of camping clothing, because you know, when you go camping, you're gonna kind of want very efficient clothing for what you're looking for, like if it's going to keep you warm or if it's going to keep it from being smelly, all of that stuff. So camping clothes are really great for van life. You may be wondering why I am so muddy, and that is because I'm gonna go dig crystals right now.
Trying to make it right.
I am taking a little lunch break and I'm gonna look at these crystals. I'm just keeping it in this Baboon to the Moon bag right now. That's what I've been bringing up when I dig. So I have my Ziploc bag. This has some of them. I put some in gloves, kind of random. There's one hanging around the bag. This is the biggest piece I got, and I just put them in water and then kind of gently scrub them. I got some really good clear small ones today, honestly, that have really pretty rainbows in them and just look really nice. So I'm just going to clean them off so I can get a good look at each of these. The other thing that I wish I would have known before I started van life was that you're going to need more water than you think. I started off with 15 gallons, which I thought seemed like a lot, and there were 3 separate jugs of 5-gallon water tanks. I have upgraded to 30 gallons and I'm loving it so much. And I feel like 15 gallons is the minimum. Like, I meet people on the road who are full-time traveling in their vans and they have a gallon of fresh water and a gallon of their gray water, like that's their reservoir. You go through it so quick. You'd be surprised all the things you use water for, like washing dishes, even taking a shower. All of that uses a lot no matter how much you try to conserve. So I started off with 15, now I have 30. I wish that I would have known that I'm just gonna need more than I thought. Before I lived in a van, I had this perception that being alone in nature was scary. This idea of a dark forest and creepy people lurking, trying to find someone to prey on. But I've been on the road for a while now, and truthfully, I'm not very often scared when I'm in nature. I find that the people I meet in nature are generally trustworthy, happy, generous, and loving. On the other hand, big cities can be really scary. I always get a ton of anxiety when I spend time in cities in California, specifically the Bay Area, Los Angeles, and San Diego. I've known many people who have had their vans broken into in those areas, catalytic converters stolen, and unwanted confrontations with strangers. I do still love those cities, and I don't mean to say that if you live in a van, you shouldn't go there. But for so long, I avoided going into nature alone because of this unrealistic fear that nature was more dangerous than the city. But really, I think it was all just about my comfort zone. I was comfortable with the city. I grew up in a city, and I didn't have much experience traveling solo or backpacking alone or living off-grid. Now I feel really familiar with this way of life, and being in nature feels really comfortable and safe to me for the most part. I found some of the coolest crystals in that pocket I was in yesterday. I dug until late last night for hours in the dark with my headlamp. The stars were so beautiful. It felt so therapeutic to just be in nature, digging, like focusing on a project. It's kind of like how I feel about rock climbing. You're interacting with nature and it's very meditative. You have a goal. Like, it's very, very good for my mental health to be in this space. But this is one of the biggest crystals I found yesterday. And actually, this is the biggest crystal I have found in this space. These crystals in this area are rare in general, and it takes a long time to find comparative to other places that you dig. But at the same time, it's so worth it because when you do get a really nice crystal, it feels like magic to see it within all of the dirt, and it just feels like you're meant to find it. There's this spiritual component to it. Like, I was asking a bunch of people yesterday how they find crystals and what their strategy, and one girl seemed super in tune and she had gotten a really good purple amethyst, and she was just saying that she talks to them and she feels them and she just like meditates, and they tell her where they are, kind of, which I know sounds a little crazy, but I think when you're in this forest, like, you feel so in tune with nature in a way that doesn't sound crazy. Like, that sounds so real. But that brings me on to the next kind of tip I have, or the thing that I wish I knew before I started living in a van, and that is that there's a big community. Like, when I first started to live in a van, I honestly envisioned it as such a solo journey. Like, I was just gonna be solo on the road for years and just like very meditative and spiritual, which is all true, and like, you can be solo for a long time if you want, but there's such a tight-knit and big community of people who live in vehicles. If I knew that it was so easy to find friends and community in this world, then I would have seeked it out a little bit more. Like, I really stayed in my bubble for my first year, I would say, and I felt like really intimidated to kind of come out of my shell. But some of the best ways to meet other people are van life festivals, like van life gatherings. So there's Descent on Ben, RTR, Schoolie Palooza. Van Fest was one that happened this year. And in some ways, to be honest, van festivals can be a little draining. You kind of have to scrub through a lot of people because there's so many people there to find your people within the group, because there are going to be a lot of people that it feels like a little more of shallow conversations, at least from my perspective, just talking about van builds or solar. And like, that's not what I want to talk about with my community and my friends all the time. I want to have deeper connections and like deeper friendships. So I feel like you do have to, scrub through that community a little bit, but you can find your people. There's so many people here in this community, and you can find your space and your group and your family, really. Like, I've made family on the road, and that feels so nice to say. I feel so welcome and understood and safe with my friends here.
Yet another sleepless night. I don't wanna leave the sheets. The world can't wait for a moment. So give me that morning heat. My dreams ain't taking me nowhere, and that fear won't leave you be.
Those pancakes were so good. I love putting like pumpkin seeds and goji berries and stuff like that on my pancakes. I think it just adds like a different texture and a crunch, and I really like that. I also put cacao nibs on it, which was really good. But the last tip that I have, the last thing that I wish I would have known about van life before I started this, was that the expenses are not just food and gas, like some people say. Like, oh, my rent is just food and gas. Yes, I guess that is true, but the maintenance for your vehicle adds up way more than if you were just staying in one spot. The more you drive, the more you're gonna have to do things like oil changes and change your brake pads and rotors, or your engine might go wrong, something in there, and it might cost a lot to get that fixed. Obviously, you're not having to pay rent, so that's such a big aspect of it and a toll taken off, but definitely car maintenance adds up, and it can be really stressful when something is going wrong on your car because it's such a big bill all at once, or it can be sometimes. That's why I tend to do that work myself when I can. The majority of the work that has had to be done on the van, I have done myself. Like, I've changed my brake pads and rotors. I've done most of my oil changes. Some of them I'm like, okay, I don't even want to deal with it right now. I'll just have someone else do it. But I changed the battery in my van, stuff like that. So there's some level of like building skills or car knowledge, mechanical knowledge that you might need. I mean, even if someone else builds out your van, things are always going wrong. Like, in an apartment, you can just have someone call maintenance, have someone fix it for you. But when you're out in the middle of the wilderness and a fuse blew and now you can't use your induction cooktop, you're going to need to know what to do in that scenario. So there's so much that I've learned along the way, but definitely be prepared to learn those things and to have things go wrong and, have your van break down maybe and stuff like that. I mean, you're relying on a vehicle to sleep. So there's a lot writing on that. That wraps it up for some of the things that I wish I knew before I went and moved into my van. I have learned so much through being on the road, and even though there's bumps along the way and challenges, it's been almost 3 years now and I don't regret it at all. I feel like I would not be the person that I am today if I didn't take this leap and take this step. I've seen so much of the world and really found my people by doing this lifestyle. So I highly recommend it. I know it's not for everybody, but if you're watching this video, I assume that you're interested in it to some capacity. I make a ton of videos about van life and my daily routines. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe because it really supports my channel. I only have one channel. And I post videos every 3 days on Wednesdays and Sundays. So I'll see you then. Bye!